Good morning. I'm not here today to ask you for your time, talent, and treasure. I think we all know in every stewardship speech that's pretty much a given. I'm not here to give you a recommendation on percentage or days of the week to volunteer. These are questions you must ask of yourselves. I only want to tell you the path I chose and how we ended up here today, and the lessons that I learned. But first I want to express my gratitude to all of the people in this parish who have shown great examples of stewardship. Teachers, faculty, priests, coaches, and lots of moms and dads. And I'm sure I speak for the many of you when I say thank you to the many of you who looked out for and helped raise the children in this parish. All of you invested your time, talent, and treasure in these children, and it cannot be measured in dollars or hours placed on a typing card. So I'd like to thank each and all of you for your dedication and your stewardship. My wife Stephanie and I, we put 2 kids through 10 nations, but we did not do it alone. We had the same help from teachers, faculty, priests, coaches, sometimes the principal, and moms and dads. An entire community is what I refer to as the church. For 2 years, while my children were in school, I was out of the country. And so many in my parish stepped forward to help with my kids when they needed a father figure. I know many of you filled similar roles for others like me in this parish. And for those reasons, I truly am in debt to all of them and all of you. It was costly also. There were times Stephanie and I struggled, and we always worried about money. It never seemed to matter how much we had, we always thought we needed more. And the thought of volunteering some time with someone I didn't know other than me, that was just way too uncomfortable. There was always an excuse, and they were pretty easy to find. And when the tithing question came up, we first drew up every excuse we could to pay the money. We talked ourselves out of it. I saw the things that I would not have rather than show gratitude for what I did have. I did not trust God, nor did I ask Him. What a huge mistake. Huge mistake. Because I realized today, He was inviting me to a joyful life of selfless generosity. But the world kept seducing me with all-encompassing selfishness. And was it selfish to say, how am I going to pay the power bill, insurance, mortgage, car note, truck note, if I give it all away? No. In fact, that is my responsibility. But there's a difference between what I'm responsible for and what I want. 2 young parents out there, you fill out that very first card, and you're going to make that calculation. Trust God. Ask God. I say to you in hindsight, that additional percentage, you will not miss it. All the realities that you're going to face, I faced, my wife and I. I often wonder, what if I had put 1% less in my 401k and gave that to the church? Which would have been the better investment? Which would have made me more like the person that God wants me to be? How much is enough? What percent? These are questions that you must answer. But remember, it's not only money, it's time and talent God asks of us. And of which of the 3 is the greater? The answer is, of which do you have the most often? Stewardship, by definition, is the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. As Christians, we're taught that our time, talent, and treasure are all on loan to us from God. And that one day, we'll have to give an account for how we manage them. So I urge you not to make my mistake. Do not fall into the abyss of earthly possessions and the culture of today's world, but rather into a life that God wants you and me to live. God will not let you down. He will not put anything in front of you that you cannot handle. He might surprise you with what you can handle. When you begin to make that calculation, first think about what you are grateful for and what you can do without. Then decide the number of the hours. When you want to measure your generosity, measure it with this quote from an unknown author. Measure your generosity not with figures and time spent, but by what is left over. In Matthew Kelly's book, The Dynamic Catholic, with a chapter on generosity, it states, the world encourages entitlement, but in reality, everything is a gift from God. God invites us to look out for our neighbor. The world tells us to look out for ourselves. The world places many obstacles in our way in our quest to be good and faithful stewards of all God has entrusted to us. And it's when we step away from gratitude and generosity that we become irritable, restless, and discontented. But you have to admit, think of the most generous person that you know. The most generous person you know. And I promise you, they're always happy. They're always happy. Why is that? In many stewardship speeches, you've probably heard this Bible verse from Luke's Gospel. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. From the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. And it's with that verse that I'd like to share a lesson that I learned. A long time ago, when I was a child, my father asked me a question that's intrigued me all my life. We were driving past a cornfield, and he asked, why do you think the rows of corn on the outside do not grow as tall as the ones on the inside? Unfortunately, every reason I gave, such as they don't get enough sunlight, or they don't receive enough fertilizer, or they don't receive enough water, or maybe they're affected by weeds and weed killer. Every excuse or every reason I can come up with, my father proved me wrong. And I say unfortunately because he never gave me the answer. But today I know the answer. It's actually very simple. The corn stalks, just as every plant uses photosynthesis to change light and chemicals for growth, has a natural will or instinct to grow towards the light. The competition between the plants creates the height, which is why the inner rows are much taller. It's a pretty simple answer, but true nonetheless. But that only explains why the inner rows grow tall. Why not the outside rows? The answer to that is, they don't have to. Recently, or a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to discuss this with a farmer. His answer was the same as I expected, but his perspective was much different. And this is what he said, I'm paraphrasing. I plow the auto rows under each year I plant corn. Their yield is not worth the trouble of harvesting. There's always an outer row that can't be helped. I wait until the inner rows are tall, and then I just get rid of the outside rows. The only thing I get out of them is when they replenish the soil when I plow them under. Again, I questioned him on what about fertilizer, sunlight, water, weed killer. Even at age 50, I'm going to try to prove my dad wrong. And this is what he said that really surprised me. He said, oh no, in fact, the outer rows get the most of all the benefits. The most sun, water, fertilizer, and they're rooted just the same as the others. They produce 2 to 4 ears of corn, but they're too small and underdeveloped. They don't produce because they're not challenged to produce. And then he said, this is what got me. There are people like that, you know. That caught me off guard. I was kind of taken aback. I knew then why my father had asked me that question. I still reflect on it today, every time I see a cornfield. See, the analogy I create in my mind is that I'm a stalk of corn. Everything that is given to me is given to me by the hands of God. My yield, my produce, is my time, talent, and treasure. With His light, He enriches me with love, grace, and forgiveness, just as the stalk receives light, water, and soil. God's grace, but we encourage one another to be good stewards. We all struggle to grow towards the light. We all do. There's not one of us in here that doesn't. But when you give back, this is how we become productive in the eyes of God. How will we yield to our fellow neighbor? Because when you give back to God and to your neighbor, that's how you become complete. And this is how I will be judged. Because everything we have comes from Him. He planted us. That's a tough concept to swallow. So today I ask you to join me and do not become plowed under by the trials and tribulations of the day. Do not take for granted what God has given to us. Step out of your comfort zone. Volunteer some time, and you will feel the comfort of God's grace. Make sure your hearts become hardened by the material needs of the earth. Be generous with time, talent, and treasure. And help those around you grow towards the light, so that we may all become worthy